So this is what Buddhism is about, and when it arose in 6th century BC in India, it created such tremendous excitement among people. People were drawn to Buddha from all walks of life, and within his lifetime he attracted tens of thousands of people into his community, which was called Sangha. And after his death, 3-4 centuries later, Buddhism started to spread to, first it went to Central Asia, to Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and from there it went to China. And within a few centuries it had become the majority religion in China, and went all the way to Korea, Japan, Tibet, and of course in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and all these countries also became Buddhist. So Buddhism was the first world religion the world has ever seen. So long before Christianity or Islam came along, Buddhism was the world religion that spread out from the country of its origin and spread to other countries. It actually predates Christianity by 400 years. It predates Islam by 1,000 years. And this is how, at 1,000 years ago, if you were to look at Asia, most of Asia was Buddhist. Buddhism was by far the most important philosophy in all of Asia. And then, of course, by then Buddhism was in steep decline in the country of its origin, and about 13th century AD, it was completely gone from India. So after that, India has not seen Buddhism for the last 800 years. And so this is what I have tried to talk about in my book, that what made India the golden bird, a great civilization, was in fact the Buddhist civilization of India. It was the Buddhist India that led to India becoming a great civilization. And of course, we all know the name of Ashoka, the great Mauryan emperor. He was the first emperor to convert to Buddhism in 3rd century BC, about 200 years after Buddha's death. And with his conversion to Buddhism it gave a big boost to Buddhism, and it began to spread rapidly. It became the major religion in his empire, and his empire spread from the Bay of Bengal all the way to Afghanistan. All of today's Pakistan and Afghanistan were part of Ashoka's empire. From Kashmir to Karnataka was part of his empire. His empire, when he was the Mauryan emperor, was the first Buddhist empire in the world, and he was the first Buddhist emperor. So the work he did to spread Buddhism was really amazing. He put up these pillars. One of the pillars that he put up is the national symbol of India, the lion capital, and he also put up these rock inscriptions. On the pillars also there are inscriptions that describe the basic teachings of Buddha, and so he set the stage for the spread of Buddhism, for the emergence of Buddhism as a major faith in India, and a position that Buddhism held for more than 1,000 years. From 3rd century BC to 10th century AD, Buddhism was the major faith in India, along with Hinduism. And then Buddhism declined and disappeared, and most of the ideas that Buddhism had come up with were absorbed into Hinduism. I'll talk about those in a different lecture. Now I would like to take the rest of the time to talk a little bit about my personal relationship with Buddhism, how I came to be a Buddhist. I came to America more than 30 years ago, and I didn't know much about Buddhism, just the basic outline of Buddha's life story. And about 25 years ago, I moved to California, and that's when, in California, Buddhism is very popular. There are lots of people who are interested in Buddhism. There are lots of Buddhist temples and Buddhist retreats. So I used to go to these places and I met people and I became interested and I started reading about Buddhism online. I also got some books. There are some very good books by a British author named Stephen Batchelor. He's a well-known Buddhist writer. So reading these books was a revelation for me. I finally understood what Buddhism was all about. See, thing is, Buddhism is such an ancient faith and it's been around for such a long time, and it disappeared in India for such a long time ago. So people in India do not know much about, there is not much knowledge about Buddhism in India, and it's so distant that people are not very attracted to it. There are not too many followers of Buddhism. So I remember when I was in India, I hardly knew anything about Buddhism, or I don't think I ever met anybody who identified himself as a Buddhist. It's only after coming to America, especially California, that I came in contact with what Buddhism is about, what Buddhist philosophy is about. That it's a living philosophy. It's as useful today as it was 2,500 years ago. One might say it's even more relevant today than it was at that time. So that's the story of my coming in touch with Buddhism, how I became Buddhist, and over the years I've read about Buddhism, I've tried to think about it, and most important, I've tried to implement it in my life, the way I live my life, the way I behave, the way I treat people, the way I exist in this world. I have tried to mold that according to Buddhist ideas and Buddhist teachings and Buddhist principles. So in the end, I would like to talk a little bit about how Buddhism has changed my life, what it has taught me, how it has impacted the way I look at the world. So Buddhism has taught me many things. The most important thing that I have learned from Buddhism is to think for myself. This is the central idea in Buddhist philosophy. See what Buddha says. This is one of the most famous teachings of Buddha. Think for yourself. You put it to test. Don't believe something that has come down to you in tradition. Don't believe something that you have read in a book. Don't believe something that somebody has told you. Don't even believe if you hear me say that. Buddha himself is saying that. Okay? You put it to test and see if it makes sense. If it makes sense, only then you accept it. Okay? So this is what I have tried to implement in my own life. That you should have. So Buddhism is basically, it's a very scientific philosophy. It's basically as close to science as it's possible for any religious philosophy to be. This is what science is all about. You observe, you look at the facts, you weigh the facts, and then you arrive at your own conclusion, and then you say, okay, this is true. And as you gather more facts, you are free to change your conclusions also. This is what Buddhism is, and that's the reason why I believe Buddhism has stayed relevant for the last 2,500 years in countries that are so different from India in every way. The culture of China or Japan or Korea or Tibet or even America is very different from Indian culture. Indian culture of 2,500 years, which when India was an agrarian country. But the Buddhism has not only succeeded and not only survived, but it has thrived. It's because Buddhism is, at its heart, it's a scientific way of looking at things. Okay, so this is what I have learned from Buddhism, that one should think for oneself, one should not jump to conclusions, one should hold judgment until one has looked at all the facts and calmly and coolly evaluated them and see where they lead to. Now, one thing my interest in Buddhism was basically, it went completely hand in hand with my interest in history, especially Indian history. I was always interested in Indian history even when I was a kid growing up in India. So what happened when I learned more about Buddhism, as I began to learn more and more about Buddhism and what I had learned about history, what I knew about Indian history, I began to see striking parallels between the two. And then this was almost like a revelation for me, that what you have to understand about Indian history, you also have to understand Buddhism in order to understand Indian history, because the golden age of Indian history, like I mentioned earlier, it's intertwined with Buddhism. So if you want to understand what has happened in Indian history last 2,000 years, you have to understand Buddhism also. And I'll talk about that in my future lectures. I'll talk about it in detail. I'll give examples where I would explain how the decline of Buddhism led to the decline of Indian society as a whole. Thank you. You're welcome.